Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. You are live on the Piper Carter podcast on Detroit is Different podcast network. If you are tuning in, we're live on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. I'm about to launch the Instagram right now. We are on YouTube. So I'm gonna ask everyone to like, share, subscribe if you want to hear some great information about Black food sovereignty, farming, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I got a wonderful, wonderful guest today. Her name is Sherrie Smith. I met her, I want to say it was during pandemic. So I want to say it was a couple years ago, maybe 2020. And I don't know why it took me so long to meet her because we have so much in common and she's so dope. And now now I can't get away from her. No, I'm just kidding. But we're in community movement builders, the Detroit chapter together. She is a mother. She's an inventor. She's a farmer. She's a hard worker. She's a community member. She is a great friend. She's very knowledgeable. Um, did I say she's a farmer and a gardener? She's a grower. Oh, she's a builder. So she's built this amazing digital app. That's one kind of building, and it's called the Black Farm Finder app, and it's so that farmers can find one another and can find resources. She's also does construction that I see. um she actually has been very instrumental in teaching me how to garden. I can say she helped get me started. um when I first met Sherrie, it was because I was filming for the organization that I now work for, some promo videos, and Sherrie was actually teaching on the videos, doing instruction how to grow right from beginning to end. So it was because of Sherrie that I actually know how to grow. Well, not solely, obviously, but let's say she's a big part of why I know how to grow food, why I'm enthusiastic about growing food. And there's so much more, but I've been talking for a long time. I'm going to bring her to the stage. I'm going to ask everyone, wherever you are, give a bunch of hearts. If you're in the live, give a whole bunch of hearts in the chat. If you're watching this after the live stream, put a whole bunch of hearts in the comments. And I want y'all to shout out Sherrie because she has created the Black Farm Finder app. Ladies and gentlemen, Sherrie Smith. Welcome,
Hey,
Sherrie.
Piper.
Hey.
So,
So, wow. So, Sherrie, I have a whole host of questions that I want to ask you,
okay.
but you sent me your resume. I mean, not resume, your bio. So, obviously, we're just getting to know each other the last few years. I feel like I see you all the time.
Right?
You're a board member of Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network.
Yep.
You, when I met you, you had, if I'm not mistaken, built the garden at Focus Hope.
No, no. So I
No.
was stewarding the community garden at Focus Hope. We built a
Oh,
few
okay.
beds, but it was largely constructed when I came on the scene.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm jumping far ahead.
Okay.
Uh, First of all, let's just jump right in.
Okay.
Let's talk. Let's start with the app, and then we'll go back to Sherrie. So,
Sweet.
um, treat me like I'm a 4-year old
Okay.
and tell me about this Black Farm Finder app. I want to know like the whole thing. Like, what is it? What does it do? Why you created it?
Okay.
You don't have to tell me the how if you don't want to. That might be a secret sauce. But whatever you don't want to share about that part. But if you're fine sharing like the
Yeah.
how and then what it does, how people can access it, when they just the A to Z
Gotcha.
of
Gotcha.
this app.
All right. I'm
Okay.
gonna pull a Simon Sinek and I'm gonna start with why.
Okay.
Is what I'm gonna do. My why mainly, like you said, a couple years ago, I was doing a lot of volunteering with farms and helping people start farms and all kinds of stuff. And it was amazing, but I realized it was only one of me. And I was like, a lot of these farms need volunteers and I can only be one, right? And so I'm like, man, how do I do this? And so I went I was farming a lot. I was running a farmer's market. I was in almost every farm event I could find. And then I took a job outside of farming, outside of urban ag for about 2 years. And man, I was like going through withdrawal to say the least. I was like, I need to get back to the land. Like this ain't it. Like I'm being indoors. I got to get back to the land. I got to get back to just farming and touching the soil and being around all the amazing people you meet when you do that. You know, there's just so many people in the Detroit urban ag community worldwide, but Detroit definitely has a lot of the dopest people in the world working the land. And so last year I had this idea and I was like, you know what, I'm not an app builder. Like, you know, I was like, I don't build apps. I do a lot of stuff, but I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this. And there was this program that came up called Builders and Backers that I just kind of challenged myself. Like, I was like, you know what? They had an application process, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put this application in, right? We'll put this application in for this app to help Black farmers get volunteers. And so put that application in and they approved it. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. So I actually got to do it. So started just kind of playing around with the idea, doing some surveying, seeing what sorts of things farmers needed. In my mind, I wanted to create something where people could first find out where the Black farms were in Detroit, because I meet people almost every day who will tell me nobody's growing food in Detroit. No, you can't grow food in the city. Nobody's doing that. And I'm like, are you crazy right now? So what I knew was that there needed to be more information out there, that people needed to know how many people were growing, like if people want to be known, let me say that, because sometimes you don't want people in your business, but if people want to be known, I felt like we needed to create something where people could find out that these farms were here, what they specialized in, if they had farmers markets, you know, when they had markets, when they could go out and support them, because I know there's a huge movement of people to buy locally grown and to support Black farmers in Detroit, but people just got to find them. So that was the first step. First step, I was like, I knew where most of the farmers were, right? I knew a lot of the farmers, and I was like, now we got to get them connected where the volunteers can find them. So that was my biggest thing. I wanted to create a platform where you could, one, access it whether you had Android or iPhone. So that's why it's a web-based app, because I did want it to be like, oh, it's only on iPhone, or oh, it's only on this. So built a platform that first and foremost lets you know where the farms are, right? So page one, you can see how many farms are close to you, like the farms that are near you in the area. Of course, we're piloting in Detroit. So when you open it up, you're gonna see the farms closest to where you are. That is a searchable list. Once we go live, you'll be able to search by things like the zip code, the name of the farm, or even if, you know, you just type in the street name, whatever farms that have that street name should pop up as well, so people can find that. It's also meant for people to set up profiles. So the farms will have profiles, but you'll also have volunteers that have profiles. So the volunteers can list themselves and kind of what their specialties are, and what they have done, and what their years of experience are. Because some farms, we know, some farms might just need somebody to come in and do some light weeding. Some farms might need somebody with carpentry experience or framing and things like that, that say your basic off the street volunteer just may not be able to help with. And so I wanted to create a place where all that information could be housed and people could kind of have an exchange. Also having farmers able to connect with other farmers, right? So there is a message board piece where farmers can post everything from items they have available, things they want to trade, jobs they're hiring for, you name it, pretty much. There's a message board, and then there's also a space for events, so that the whole farming community can be aware of things that other farmers are doing, right? So that we can move in community and everybody's not kind of hosting 80,000 different events, but also so that people know, like, hey, if I know Piper is having a herbal tea harvest party at her house, you know, that might be an event I want to go to, but I never would have thought about, you know, searching for that maybe on an Eventbrite or even on a Facebook. And I think right now we have a large amount of some of our more mature farmers and urban growers that are kind of on Facebook and in groups like that, while a lot of our younger, newer farmers and people in the food space are more on things like TikTok. They're on apps. They're looking for things in different spaces. So I wanted to create something that will bring them together and kind of make that available. And then a space where if people have things that they're advertising, say to farmers, whether it's jobs for farmers, products that farmers use at a discounted rate, making that available for them to be able to find it in one place where they can, if companies want to donate, it doesn't have like ads and things like that, but if companies want to donate to be a supporter, if they have things or events. And then today I just got a suggestion. So we're going to try to work this in before the launch. We do launch on February 8th. That's next Thursday. So I'm pretty excited. People will be able to sign up and sign on as volunteers and farmers. And we were talking today about making a space where groups can sign up to volunteer. So originally it was just kind of, one volunteer, one profile. Then the question came up, well, what happens if they are like corporate groups and things that want to, or like say your Divine Nine groups who want to go to a farm and touch down as a group of 20. So we're working on trying to be able to work that in there. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, and then there's also, so I said message board, event page, and it's expandable. So that's the cool thing. How I did it myself, literally. So I learned how to use this system called Airtable a couple years ago, which I call my digital boyfriend because I feel like Airtable is so customizable, it does whatever I want. Airtable is the back end, so it's able to kind of house all the information. And then I use something called Softer.io. It is a no-code system that you can build like forward-facing apps. So it's the front end is built in Softer. So when people see it, if they go to the website now, you're not able to sign up for it. You can go to www.blackfarmfinderapp.com. That's www.blackfarmfinderapp.com. And it'll show on there, like it'll show some of the map stuff, and it'll say, we launch on February 8th, which is also my dad's birthday. He is an ancestor. So I thought it was awesome that one great thing in my life started on February 8th. And so I decided to start another great thing in my life on February 8th. So I think that might have covered just about everything on what the app does and why and how I did it.
Okay, we had some people who just joined. I want to say
Okay.
peace to people that are with National Black Food
Welcome,
and
welcome.
Justice Alliance.
Welcome.
And
Welcome.
yeah, and some other like Detroit growers. So one question is it, you said it, but I want you to repeat it. Is it local or national? And do you have plans for it? Yeah.
Right now it's local. We're piloting local, just because I can kind of touch down on places in Detroit, and a lot of the locations are based on like longitude and latitude and stuff. So I can kind of test out and troubleshoot locally. But once we get everything running, and I'm kind of confident. So here's the thing: it's not limited in its scope, right? So if somebody say from somewhere, say in Jacksonville, Florida, wanted to go in and sign up and put their farm on the map in Jacksonville, Florida, if somebody in Jacksonville, Florida goes to the map, it ideally should show them. Now, if Jacksonville want to test that out for me next week and let me know, that would be great. But yeah, it's not limited. It's not going to block any zip codes or locations at this point. So I will say my initial focus is Detroit, but it is not limited to Detroit, no.
Okay, people are starting to join.
Okay.
And we jumped all the way into the app. So while people are joining, since you just said that, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that I have here. So what specific experience from, your diverse background, which we'll get into, most influenced your decision to create the Black Farm Finder app?
Couple things. I would say my experience. So, a couple years ago, I was running a farmer's market and I was stewarding a community garden. So at the time, what I understood was in the nonprofit spaces that I was working with, and a lot of the people who had kind of been maneuvering around in the ecosystem for a while, it was always kind of the same thing. Like, people you can't really get volunteers. Nobody wants to help. Nobody really wants to come out. And that hadn't been my experience. So even though I was new to a lot of things, most people who know me know I'll just show up. Like I'm not, I don't necessarily need an invitation. if the people look like they doing something, I'll just show up and hop out the car. And so what happened was I started driving around, right? There was a list that I was given of like local farms in the area I was living in. At the time I was living in District 2 over off of say like the Lodge near Linwood area. And so I was given this list of local like farms and gardens and growers. And I'm asking people and they're like, we can't get in touch with the people. We don't know where they are. And so I'm not real big on sitting in offices. So I was like, okay, we got addresses. I'm just going to pull up. And so I started driving around, and a lot of these places were like abandoned. They were no longer operating as gardens and farms. Like people had just kind of let them go. And everybody I'm asking didn't know why, right? They're like, I don't know. They were doing it last year. They were doing it a year ago. And so as time kind of moved on, I ended up meeting some of these people, and the answer was the same for everybody. Like it got to be too much. Like I was excited in the beginning. I really wanted to grow. I knew I wanted to grow some food, and it was great, right? And I got this land and I got this vacant lot and I got started and I got these seeds. And then I realized how much work it was. And then I ended up in the emergency room pulling muscles I didn't know I had. And then, I realized my family wasn't necessarily going to come help me harvest all this stuff all the time. And a lot of people were like, I just couldn't keep it up, right? I didn't realize how much work it was. And so even my experience working with the community garden, I did a lot of that kind of one-to-one. So because I spent time in the space, a lot of people would just come up to me like, what can we do? Like, can we help? Can we hang out? What are those growing over there? And so I ended up meeting all these people, and we would have volunteer events and people would show up, right? And then there's some other gardens and farms in the city that I know that, always could get volunteers. And I was kind of always wondering like, well, what's the difference? Like what's happening over here that's not happening over here, right? Are these people doing something different? And in a lot of ways they were. Some people were really great at appreciating volunteers. Some people were really great at getting the word out, whether it was on social media, whether it was on word of mouth, and they were just very active in the neighborhood. You had some people who would just be like, hey, we're going to do this event and print a flyer and just put it in the library. And I'm like, yeah, that's not necessarily going to work for where we are right now, right? And I'm fairly tech savvy, and so for me, I'm usually checking stuff. If you want something fun to do, let's check Eventbrite. Or if you want, you want to go somewhere, you can check these with fun things to do in Detroit. But I wasn't really seeing anything as far as farms, right? There was nothing that was saying, hey, I would go volunteer at a farm, and I would have people like when I started volunteering at farms like D-Town and stuff, I would be sharing it on social media. Like, we're out here, look at this whole farm in the city. And people are like, what, where is this? Like, where did you go? And I'm like, man, there's so much stuff here that people who've been living here our whole lives don't even know about. Like I lived around people who 3 blocks over, beautiful gardens. I'm talking about collards shooting to the sky. And it was like, if I hadn't turned on this block, I wouldn't even know this was here. And same thing, more people are seeing this now. But same thing with people with livestock, with chickens, with all kind of stuff. One day I thought I was going crazy. I was training for a marathon and I kept thinking I heard a rooster. And so I'm like off Rosa Parks and Oakman Boulevard. And I'm like, and so I found another lady on the track and I was like, listen, ma'am, I'm not trying to interrupt your walk, but do you hear that chicken too? And so she's like, yeah, they got roosters down the street. And I'm like, woo, listen, that was a close one. So there was just so much stuff that people didn't know was happening, right? And every time I'm finding stuff out, I'm like, what? We do this here. We do this here too, right? And so then, you start meeting a lot of the rock stars of Detroit urban ag, right? I don't even
wait, hold up. It's some rock stars in the chat of Detroit.
It's some rock stars ag. In the chat. Listen.
Yeah, listen. We got Magnetic Sun. Peace to Magnetic Sun.
Well, I just met him last week at the Capricorn party. Yes.
Okay, that's Nurturing Our Seeds Garden on the East Side. Shouts out to Magnetic Sun, Eric Cole. Okay, that now his wife Erin and him. That's where I got my first compost. Their compost is amazing. They hooked me up with my first transplants. Like you helped me in teaching me. They helped me in giving me resources and teaching me. Shouts out to Travis Peters.
Yes,
in the chat. He's his garden is dedicated to helping veterans heal through gardening. He has all of our people like you, Magnetic Sun, Travis, all y'all got amazing young people. Y'all all have amazing children. So all of y'all are like invested in the community, and like your whole family is helping y'all do this, and so that's dope. I also wanted to say peace to Tasha Phoenix from National Black Food and Justice Alliance. She's on the leadership team. Izula Jade is in the chat. So anyway, who else is this? Braylon Brown is in the chat with peace. Who's this KFC 28? That's a hilarious name, but oh, so it's National Black Food and Justice. Hey, Cicely's in the chat.
Hey, Cicely.
From National Black Food and Justice Alliance.
I was gonna say, I don't know if I'm allowed to say. Am I allowed to say that this is partly made possible by National Black Food Justice Alliance?
Yeah, okay, talk about that. Let's talk about that. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that though. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's talk. Yeah. Because people got sent their letter. So you guys sent your letter, right? You guys sent the letter? Yes. Okay, go ahead. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, so another fun thing is this app right now partially is made possible by the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. So I received a grant, a mutual aid grant from the National Black Food and Justice Alliance at the end of 2023. That is going to help me do a few things. And so I'm glad Travis Peters is down there, because one of the things that I did with the Black Farm Finder, even before the app was launched, one thing I'm also passionate about is helping to fundraise and give funds to people directly, right? Almost like mutual aid. And so when I started with this app, I was with a group called Builders and Backers that did some pretty awesome work. They kind of did some seed work to experiment, right? And so one of the things I wanted to do was an annual soup event. Now, anybody who knows me knows I love me a good soup event. And for those who don't know, a soup is like a mutual aid fundraising dinner. And so what happens is you sell tickets and you have people come and pitch, right? So we have 4 pitchers. They get 4 minutes to pitch. People ask them up to 4 questions, and then everybody in the crowd gets to vote for whoever they want to get all the funds, and they take home all the funds at the door. So there's no money comes off the top, nothing like that. And so my first soup we did back in September, and we had 4 amazing pitchers, and Travis Peters was one of them. We also had Finnegan's Farms and Mama Joe's Butterfly Garden, and Brother Truth over at Liberated Farms. So they all pitched that day. Finnegan's Farms took home over $700. And so that was awesome. And so part of what we're doing with, thanks to the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, is our 2nd annual Farmer Soup event, which is coming up in March, so that we can help farmers at the beginning of the season this year, right? So in addition to trying to help people get volunteers and making sure that they're able to sustain the work, we want to also kind of plant a seed financially and make sure they can get needed equipment or, needed compost, say, from nurturing our seeds, and be able to kind of start their season off right without having to, struggle to do that, because farming can be expensive. But I feel like in the Detroit community, it's very helpful that everybody's so cooperative, right? Like you have a lot of people who might just say, hey, we're going to come. Like I remember when we came to your house during the pandemic, Bob Malik calls it the Kazi mob. And we all came over there.
Okay, hold on. Let me tell everybody this story.
Okay.
Okay, so I've been a member of Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. I want to say about at least a little over a decade. Yeah. So, but I was a member. That's just like me. I had my own community center. I was volunteering over there at East Michigan Environmental Action Council. I'm just involved. And my relationship with the org was I would do photos, and I was a member, paying member, but then I would do photos and stuff and video for the organization, for Baba Malik's band, Molly Wop. Shouts out to Molly Wop. If y'all don't know, Baba Malik makes some great music. Yeah. And so I was doing their band photos, then I would do photos for the organization, like promo photo I would do. And then I was asked to produce a video series to teach gardening during pandemic, because so many people wanted to grow during pandemic. Yep. So Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network created something called the Kazi Mob. And then people know about Swahili. Kazi is work, but a collective work. But the thing is, it was basically members from the community come together, and he puts the call out to say, y'all want to go help somebody like get their garden going from nothing to something. And it's nobody gets paid.
Yep.
and everybody just comes out. So people are like, I have wood, I got tools, I got seeds,
Yes.
I got plants, I got compost. I'll help build it. So y'all, listen, I live deep in the hood, and I'm talking about like if I take a lift home and I say, I tell the Lyft driver I live down here, he's like, no, 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 no. I drop you here, okay? I drop you, you walk. That's
Wait,
why.
we live 4 minutes away from each other, though. We live 4 minutes away from each other.
So when y'all came out there with all the stuff, they came out with everything. It was like, I
Yeah.
felt like Cinderella. It was like, I felt
We
like
had a
the
good
Black
time.
Cinderella. Y'all came with the wood, y'all came with the tools, y'all came
Yeah.
with everything. And then it was like, Dr. Shakira came. Shouts out to Aisha,
Yeah.
Baba Hakeem, you, everybody. And y'all built my 2 raised beds,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
had my seeds, and that's what got me started. And so
Yeah.
I just want people to know that was 2020.
Yep.
And I went from that to now I've got a greenhouse. I've got probably like around 15
Yeah.
raised beds. I'm growing like 90% of my food still, even after pandemic. I've gotten into herbs. I'm studying herbalism, about to get a certificate in herbalism, growing all the herbs in there. Um, it's because of people like you, Bob Malik, Magnetic, like community people.
Yeah.
So I just want people to understand it seems impossible because everybody's busy.
Yeah.
But this is our culture,
Mm-hmm.
and our grandparents and everyone before us, like they did this. This is what we do. This is
Yeah.
our culture.
Yeah.
This is who we
Absolutely.
are. So anywho, I'm gonna stop talking and go ahead.
I'm glad you said that, because that is exactly what I was going to say. Is that the whole thing about getting more volunteers for people is that we know that when we put our hands together, this is posted somewhere at D-Town, and then most of us repeat it all the time. It says many hands make light work, right? And so when we were getting those calls, I think the first one we did was Baba Charles and Mama Sandra Simmons, and Baba Malik's like, we're gonna go and we just gonna dig up some stuff at their house, and we're gonna make some space in their front yard. Like they didn't even have like a garden space or nothing. They was like, we're gonna put some raised beds in the back, we're gonna dig up some space in the front yard, and we're gonna, build a garden for them. And it was like, of course, like it made of course, like of course we're going, right? And then I think next week we did Aisha's house next, because she was right down the street from them. And so it just kind of kept, kind of growing, and we kept ended up with more places. But it was awesome. Like it was, I always tell people, like, garden work is some of the greatest work you'll do, right? And you'll be with some people who you will just experience in a way that's different than anything else. And so with that being our culture, it's so funny that you said that. Walter Rodney has this book called, I think it's called Groundings with My Brothers. It's on my nightstand. And he talks about this history of hospitality, right? From African originated people. Like when white folks came and visited Africa, they were like, it's weird over here almost, because there's no such thing as poverty. There's no such thing as somebody being without, right? Because if somebody's without, you can't stop the other people from giving them something. They're gonna give them something just to make sure that everybody is good. And so that's kind of what that mob felt like, right? Like we want to give people whatever. Like if it's building a raised bed, we can get together and build. Like, that's a few minutes for a group of us. Now, if one person is trying to struggle and do that by themselves, that's a whole nother situation. But when you got a group of people, that's light work. And so that was, man, we had a blast. We had a blast doing that. We had a blast taping that learning series. That was pretty awesome too. I was telling everybody I was bragging. So this was funny, Piper. You remember meeting me in 2020. We actually met in 2019 at a couple of events. We did the We Found Hip Hop. I don't remember if that was the first year. I don't think that was the first year of the Black Natural Hair Show, but there was We Found Hip Hop. I think it was like the Detroit is Different Festival. Just a bunch of different places where you were in more of your, your DJ, your hip hop bag, where I was telling people, I was like, y'all know I was shot by Piper Carter in 2020. I was putting my shades on. I was like, yeah, Piper Carter shot me this week. I was out here. So yeah, we met earlier than that, but it wasn't around gardening. It was more around, the other stuff in the community. And so
But wait,
that
can
was
we just, okay, so as y'all can see, her hair is cute. So Sherrie does natural hair, and
yeah, yeah.
every time you see Sherrie, you won't know who she is because her hair is gonna be different, and it's gonna be
That's right,
a
man.
fresh, natural style, and you'll be like, "You was there, Sherrie? Yeah, girl, I had the twists on the
Right. Oh
side.
yeah, yeah.
I had the this and that." I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah. And then it was short for a while. Then I let it just went wild. So yeah, we've been wilding out for a while. I've been wilding for a while. Yeah. So that was major in the farming community in this area. 2020 was huge. I feel like 2020 inspired a lot of people to start growing who might have, kind of dipped their toes in before, but 2020 was like, let's go. And I loved it. It was one of those things that was like, this is the time. And I felt like it was just a really phenomenal experience. We met so many people, man. Like it was so many people just starting and expanding, and man, it was great to be a part of that. So I love hearing your story. We ain't gonna tell them about the time that I came over there. Piper always calls my tools sexy because I just like I wear this utility belt.
Sherrie got
Okay.
sexy. Listen, y'all. Sherrie's
Yeah.
one of those like handy persons
True.
that Sherrie needs to do a uh a black girl magic or black woman magic fashion line
Man.
for black women or black people that like to stunt in the farm. You want to stunt in the farm? Sherrie gonna have some fly boots, but this is the thing. She's gonna have some
Yeah.
fly overalls, a fly hat,
Yeah.
all types of gloves. But her tools will be color coordinated and match. But let me tell you something. Her boots gonna be Gore-Tex, first of all, so they're gonna be waterproof. They're gonna be everything you need. Her overall is gonna be like all types of insulation and protection, waterproof something. Her hat is gonna be some sort of like special, like reflective thing that also absorbs the sun into her brain. It's gonna be like her tools is gonna be so cute, and you're gonna be like, "Where you get that from?" But it's gonna be so sturdy. And she doesn't just like look cute. It's content and substance.
Yeah, we're going to work. I always tell people that's the hardest thing about being in the garden because the tools might look cute, but man, they come to work. Like they coming to work. Them overalls, man, those get me through. I always tell people if it's higher than 35 degrees, you can find me outside. You catch me outside higher than 35 degrees. So man, listen, I went through so many overalls. I'm actually in the field to find me some more right now. More overalls. At first I thought you were talking about the cowboy boots. Like I don't wear those in the garden because you can't mess those up. We don't play with those. But yeah,
no, I'm talking about the waterproof joints.
Yeah. Oh, listen,
the thick ones. That's like, don't they protect against snakes or something?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you got to have them go up high. You can't mess around. Not like it's snakes on Linwood, but you never know. You never know what you might run into. But yeah, you got to be prepared, man. And that's always for that. That's the thing I love about gardening, man. You can be out there and just living it up. I always say it ain't hard to be cute in the garden. I'll tell you that right now. Listen, it's not a lot of competition. It ain't hard to be cute out there. Okay. I enjoy it very, very much. Once them overalls get on, I ain't worried about nothing like that. I told you that's like my super suit. Once I zip them boys up, it's a wrap.
Oh, Tasha said, "What's the name of them boots?"
Man, I got it's actually more than one pair, so I couldn't even tell you. Like one pair, and this was so crazy, is most of the stuff I usually get on clearance or very, very cheap. Like my favorite pair of garden boots that I've worn probably about 3 or 4 years, I got free from Sears. And man, those boys served me.
Okay, wait. Y'all know I'm telling y'all the truth. Listen, y'all know I'm telling y'all the truth about Sherrie styling because I got 2 pairs of boots. One for the cold weather and one for the not that cold weather. That they're both waterproof. Sherrie got boots. She don't wear the same. You're gonna see Sherrie this week.
I don't know.
Me, I got 4 coveralls. The long sleeve ones with the button up. The short ones. I got the overalls. But Sherrie, I don't even listen. I never seen really Sherrie wear the same thing twice in the garden.
I think it just
We
looks
need to
different
do a
on different
fashion
days.
magazine. We need to do
That
a
might be
fashion
after I
magazine.
washed it. I feel like it's different. Like I feel like because I keep one standard coverall in the trunk, like just in case I run into something on the side of the road. I'll be like, wait, I need to put my coveralls on. So it's one standard one. Then I got a couple other ones, you know, out there in the midst. This year I want to switch it up a little bit. So we gonna see how creative I can get this year. You know,
Wait,
so,
y'all hear this, right?
yeah, you know I'm gonna
she
be
gonna
I'm gonna
stun
be
on him. Sherrie gonna be stunting on him in the garden,
the app
yo.
too. So I'm gonna get with some people. The logo gonna be on the cover. You know, they gonna so they can see me.
Y'all
They
see? She
y'all can see me in
Jeezy
the
out
street.
here.
Yeah,
stunting on him.
that's what we gotta do. I'm gonna have it etched into my machete handle and stuff. You know, like that's what you gotta do.
That's what. So, shouts out to Kadiri. Rest in peace. My brother Kadiri, that used to be the farm manager at D-Town Farm. He used to rap, have a hip hop group, but he used to. When we would work with the youth doing hip hop in the garden and stuff, he would always say he had this song. He would teach them, "I'm a G. I'm a grower. I'm a G." And I'm like, "You a G? You a grower?" Starting on him in the garden. What?
That's how you got to do it. That's when I'm at my best. I tell people that. That's when I'm at my best.
So I got a few more questions. So because people are jumping in the chat.
Sure.
Let me know more about so what's the biggest challenges that you face in developing the app, and like how did you overcome them?
I'm gonna be real. I feel like one of the biggest challenges was, you know, knowing that I can grow some things in real life and putting, you know, that same energy into doing something that's going to kind of be more in the electronic space. I feel like one of the biggest challenges was probably a confidence challenge, which I'm, like you said, I'm very handy, right? If you give me a pile of stuff, I can make some things work. You know, the internet, electronic things aren't necessarily that way, or at least initially I didn't see it that way, right? And then the more I kind of, I would say, got out of my own way, I was like, we're going to do this just like we do it in the garden, right? You know, if it don't work, pluck it out, we're going to do something different, or just leave it in there. And a couple of years later, it might sprout something. You never know. And so I think probably confidence was one that just kind of, I was like, well, you sure you want to tell people this what you do? Like, you sure you want to do this in public? That was a big one. And then I would also say, not totally knowledge. Knowledge of softer was something I didn't have. I had used Airtable for a couple of years in a previous job, which is kind of how I knew how beneficial it could be in a whole bunch of different applications. Because I don't just use it for this. I use it for some other stuff too. But so I learned how beneficial that could be. And I was like, okay, kind of retrofitting and building from the ground up. I call it, I don't know if this is what it's technically called, because it's not my technical background, right? And so just kind of the scaffolding piece of putting an application together, trying to map out like where you want the information that the person puts in to go and where it's going to end up and what happens next. Like if they do this, then that, and, you know, doing all the little logic trees and all of that stuff. And I like to say I'm an army of one sometimes. So a lot of that time was just me kind of, you know, with big pieces of paper on the wall and, you know, figuring stuff out and plugging stuff in, and it didn't work and starting over. And so that just the continuation of getting through that. And then I had a major loss in July. One of the closest people in the world to me died suddenly. We thought we had a lot more time with her, and we did not. My favorite aunt, my favorite ancestor, my Aunt Brenda, died suddenly. And that definitely took the wind out of a lot of things that I was doing. And so there was a lot of question of, you know, am I going to keep doing this project? And so we limped along to the soup in September. And then I just kind of was like, and just was like, man, is this what you really want to do? And it just kept coming back to me. It was just one of those things that was like, you know, we got to do this, right? And so just kind of getting myself back into the mindset. I also like to thank my CMOS that I've been taking. Shout out to Dr. Asa Lockett. I call him doctor. I don't think he goes by doctor. I said that. Don't nobody go on his page talking crazy. But he sells this CMOS that I've been taking probably for a couple months, and that and mushrooms and all kinds of stuff have definitely been helping me kind of get my head back in the game and get my focus. So once I did that, it was kind of off and running. Like I literally was just like, okay, we're gonna try everything. Like we're gonna try everything. We're gonna try it quickly. We're gonna execute. So that's been the biggest thing. Execution. Like sometimes I'll get in my own head and just kind of overthink a lot of stuff. And right now we're in execution mode. I was like, in 2024, we're gonna execute. And the worst thing that can happen is, it can do something or not do what it's supposed to do, and then we can fix it. Like that's the worst thing. So yeah, I'm just excited.
Well, first of all, I want to say rest in peace to your aunt. What was your aunt's name?
Mom, Brenda.
Aunt Brenda. So rest in peace to your Aunt Brenda. And that's really hard because
Yeah.
like my mom passed in 2021 too, and my dad passed in 2022, and that literally put me on my back.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh, it'll
I
do that.
definitely want to send you some love, and I'm
Yeah.
just now
Yeah.
coming into life. So yeah, I want to just send you lots of love. That's a lot to hold. You know what I'm saying right there. And the garden helped a lot.
Yes. It would. Yes.
Being
Yes.
on the farm, being on the
Yeah.
garden, putting my hands in the dirt. Like,
Yep.
can you talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. Listen. Yes, I can. Um. So one of we said we were gonna talk about my varying background, right? And so before garden, before doing demolition and all that fun stuff, I patronized the place that was called a mental health gym, right? Because I was really big on mental health and just trying to figure out how to take care of myself mentally, emotionally. Everybody knows I'm a single mom, and so this wanting to maintain stability, just in life in general, was important to me. So even in my 30s, early 30s, I was like, I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself so that I can be around for my kids and so that I can be a contributing member of society in my right mind, because I like being in my right mind. And so started going to this place and just really saw all these results, right? And in 2020, actually, I was out at the community garden, and I had started working for the mental health gym that I used to go to because they needed some help. And I was like, hey, I ain't got nothing to do. I'll come up here and start working sometimes. So I started working there. Of course, they shut down for the pandemic. During that summer, I decided to install drip irrigation across this whole community garden. And if anybody remembers the space, it's a large space. So I'm running lines of water. I'm talking about 50, 60 feet. And the way this system kind of works, you just kind of squeeze these pieces together and push them into each other, right? And you do that about 100 times, right? Which is not recommended. It's recommended. I should have had a Kazi mob that day. I did not. So over this whole weekend, I ended up doing this for like 3 days. By day 3, like the last piece I pushed in, my shoulder just like collapsed, right? My shoulder collapses. My fingers are like burning. I can't move my fingers. And I'm like, what is going on with my arm? And so I ended up posting, I must have posted about it because I got a call from some of the people who worked with me that were like, hey, Sherrie, you need some of these patches. And I didn't know what they were at first. They were like, these are called grounding patches, right? And so what you do, just like outside, anybody who's not familiar with grounding, some people call it earthing. It's literally like you connect to the ground. So we were never designed to wear shoes all the time, right? So if you go outside, stand barefoot, connected to the soil, not on concrete, not on asphalt, to the soil, there is scientific evidence for people who need that. I didn't need the scientific evidence. I knew what I experienced, but for people who need scientific evidence, there's evidence that your blood pressure will be lower after 20, 30 minutes of just standing barefoot on the ground. Your blood pressure is lower. You are calmer. You have less, your body, it's called grounding because it takes these kind of loose electrons out of your body that kind of will just bunk around and wreak havoc, right? They get kind of filtered off. So you don't have those problems. A lot of the things that those things are responsible for, things like inflammation, right? And so when there are injuries and inflammation, grounding can help reduce inflammation. It helps reduce pain. And so there's a company where they created these things called earthing patches where you can do this indoors too. So if you cannot be outside, say it's wintertime or the weather is inclement, you can use these patches and you literally plug them into the wall. Mine is plugged in my room right now, actually. You plug it into the wall, into the ground port on your, if you got the little 3-prong, into the ground port, you plug it in, stick the little patch on it, and stick it wherever on your body you're having issues, and it grounds you, the person, to like help reduce inflammation. So my arm jacked up for like 3 or 4 days. My arm's wrecked. They bring me some of these patches, and exactly, that's exactly what it meant. Because if you're down, especially as a kid, like you down on all fours in the dirt, you're gonna be calmer, you're gonna be more relaxed. Like it's no question about that. So I get these patches, literally, like within a day, my fingers stopped tingling. There was a lot less swelling in my arm. After a week, my arm was pretty close to back to normal. I did that and a few other things, but I've probably been using that system ever since. And it's one of those things I like to give to people for Christmas and stuff, especially a lot of the elders who don't like to use a lot of pills and medications, and people who are trying to get to anti-inflammatory. I think grounding is phenomenal for that. And if you can't take a person outside, like use it indoor, they have everything from patches to mats that you can just, put on the ground and put your feet on, or you can lay on them. They have pillowcases. They got all kind of stuff at this point. But yeah, grounding was major, major, major. And so that's kind of one of the things that I started to use to reduce stress. Even if it was just, hey, I'm stressed at work, I'm going to go pull some weeds and I'm just going to spend some time, in the soil, and it works every time. Like it's better than Code 45. Works every time. And yeah, I recommend it for people. I think it's awesome for people to get reconnected, especially men. I heavily recommend men get out into the soil. I think it's easier to convince women. Like we'll be like, hey girl, I just went out there crying in the dirt, and next thing you know, you got 15 women crying in the dirt next to you. A lot of times for the men, it's a little bit tougher. They'll be like, yeah, I was out there cutting the grass. It's not the same thing. You just standing around in the yard in your work boots is not the same thing. Take your shoes out, clear a space. I would say make it a sacred space in your yard somewhere where it's just soil that you can, kind of just plant yourself in from time to time and just reconnect with the earth. It has major, major healing effects.
Your background is in is it psychology or is it
So my degree is in counseling psychology. Yep.
Okay,
but,
your degree is in okay.
Let me be clear. I did 4 years of engineering before that. So I changed majors after 4.5 years in college, right? So yeah, I did engineering first. And then I was like, I didn't want to work with things. I wanted to work with people. I knew early on that I was like, things is not where it's at. I did a couple internships with some car companies and I was like, nope, this ain't gonna work. And so my degree ended up being in counseling psychology.
Okay, so now it all makes sense.
Does it?
Yes. Now I understand everything. And well, not all, because there's probably so many other parts of you that are amazing. But I know a slither now more about why you're so amazing. So I want to shout out Ross Kofi is in the chat. I want to shout out Sterling's in the chat. So Sterling is over there at Keep Growing Detroit, and
awesome.
Ross Kofi from National Black Food and Justice Alliance.
That sounds really familiar.
Elisa says here, I'll put it up here, that we need a magazine, like a fashion magazine with farmers, growers, and naturalists.
I tried to, a couple years ago, Baba Malik, I think, ETL had done one too. They had been taking these pictures of them just kind of randomly holding, vegetables and stuff. And they not for anywhere, we're just taking a picture. And I was like, man, this will be a dope calendar. Like, y'all guys, and then I think Truth had one too, where he had this picture with this watermelon. And I was like, these dudes look so happy and so natural. It's just perfect. Like the way they look growing this stuff, just phenomenal. See, yeah, I definitely think a magazine or some sort of publication for all the natural. There's so much natural stuff happening in the D, whether it's even outside of the growing, whether it's even just mixing. I think about people like Mama Lottie Spady and a lot of the work she's doing at Earthseed Detroit, just growing and then teaching people how to make like tinctures and all kinds of stuff. I had never, like, I was mind blown, right? I was like, I'm gonna collect these leaves. Mama Lottie had all kind of stuff. We made fire cider a couple months ago, just making medicines and just different things that so many things are possible, right? That we just never even thought about. And so it's just so exciting to be a part of this kind of, I don't think it's a resurgence because I don't think we ever fully left urban agriculture. I just think a lot of us, like a lot of things in our history, it was kind of erased and other things were promoted. So we kind of paid attention to the shiny stuff, and the thing we really, really needed went in the background. And so now a lot of us, I feel like in our older years, because I didn't get reintroduced to the land probably until I was in my late 30s. I'm probably like 38ish. I think probably around 38 that I really started accepting that. Because funny story is, I was 15 years ago, if you would have said, Sherrie, you are going to be a farmer, I would have been like, something's wrong with you. Because my grandmother is an avid gardener, right? My Aunt Brenda, avid gardener. My whole life, they would be like, you want to come outside? You want to plant these flowers? And I'm like, never. I was born in the city. What are you talking about? Like, we don't do that. And I was just so anti the land. I was one of those, I'm not even gonna say some of the ignorant stuff I said about, not wanting to be a slave. Just, it was nonsense. It was years and years of nonsense. And it took for me to end up working a job part-time at a local nonprofit that kind of plugged me into this farmers market. And I didn't even know what that was. Like in Detroit, I knew what Eastern market was, but I had never heard the term farmers market. And so I was like, what is that? In Detroit, like, what does that even look like in Detroit? Are there farmers? I was one of those people, like, are there farmers? And so got plugged in, and I had a garden mentor. Shout out to my garden mentor. His name is Dr. Felix Rogers. He was also my cardiologist for a season. And got plugged in, and he is a volunteer. And they said, you're going to go with him and volunteer in the garden, in these flower gardens. You know where the flower gardens are, over there at Cool Cities Park. So they sent me over there to volunteer with him. You're going to be there a couple hours. And they said, Sherrie, don't feel bad if he fires you, because he's fired all the other volunteers. And I was like, but they volunteers. And he's like, yeah, they do. He just tells them to never come back again, right? And so I go out and I meet this guy, and this is another part of my fun background. I end up finding out he's not just a gardener, he's a cardiologist who just is an amazing, amazing gardener. Gardening elder, I'll say, just turned 76 years old. So amazing gardener, cardiologist. And so we end up bonding over the fact that most plant botanical names are in Latin. Now, in addition to having to take Latin in high school, I also was a medical biller for about 5 years, a couple years back when my kids were little. And so, most of medical terminology is Latin. And so we're talking about Latin terms and why foxglove is toxic and all kinds of stuff. And so we end up having a blast, right? And so they come back to me a few days later. They're like, Sherrie, we don't know what you did, but he said you can, not only can you come back into the garden, right? You got the pass to come back. He said you can even be there if he's not there. And so they were like, that was like miraculous. Nobody had ever gotten the keys to the kingdom like that. And so I knew that was important. I knew that was something special. And so I started studying, man. I was studying everything, like everything about plants. I went to I became a master gardener through MSU. I did not maintain that credential. That's another long story for another day. But yeah, I became a master gardener through MSU, and just got into as much gardening and soil and got around as many garden people as I possibly could. And it's just been an amazing journey, man. It's been amazing.
Wow. I mean, I could go on talking about just how dope you are and all the stuff that you do. I wanted to, let me see, I got all these little questions here. So, okay. So beyond connecting farmers and volunteers, how do you think, or how do you envision the Black Farm Finder app fostering a sense of community within the Detroit Black farming community?
So, a couple things. Through the ability to be able to share, whether that's resources, job needs, items needed, and being able to meet those needs fairly quickly. There's also the ability to share events so that people know the other things that other farmers are doing. Because I think that's another thing. Like a lot of times, I feel like people would support if they knew. Sometimes it's just an issue of nobody knew what was happening. And then I also want to do some collective events. Of course, soup events are collective, but I also want to do kind of a joint collective volunteer appreciation, right, at the end of the season. So having all the farms that have used volunteers throughout the year come together and just appreciate those volunteers, because this is an interesting work that takes a lot, right? This is people bringing their bodies to do this work, and sometimes their expertise too. This is people sharing seeds, sharing tools, sharing resources, and being able to just appreciate that in community. I think is major because that gives people a chance to, even outside of the work. Sometimes when we're in the work, it can be really focused, but when you're outside of the work and you're able to just kind of see those people outside of that and just kind of break bread and share some time, I think that's major. So I definitely want to see this start to bring about things where people are aware of what's going on in the community and kind of closer, reaching out to one another, whether that's sharing things or saying, hey, we're all gonna get together at this person's farm and do that. And we have those pockets. There's definitely pockets of farmers that are working together, that are, pooling their resources to sell produce and all kinds of things, and just wanting to build more of that and just make sure and lift that up so that more people know it's happening.
Okay, that's pretty good stuff. Um, I definitely Magnetic Sun is showing you some love in the chat.
Thank you.
Yep. So
And I
is Tasha.
see the chat. I don't know if I
So
can.
okay, what's your long-term goals for the Black Farm Finder app, and how do you envision it expanding its impact in the future?
So realistically, I always I tell people sometimes that my goal for this app was a little bit selfish, in that I wanted to be able to know like where the farms were. I always envision like me and the kids going on vacation, right, and just being like, wait, what farms near here? Let's pull up on some Black farms, right? So I definitely envision my hope, within less than a few years, is that not only are we in Detroit, but every area where there are Black farmers, they are on this app, they're connected to each other, they're able to help sustain their work, and maybe even help sow the seed of creating more growers, right? Because I feel like a lot of people might think, okay, this is too much, I can't do it. But when you see other people like in real life, it's one thing to watch, anybody can watch a bunch of YouTube videos, right? But when I can call a Piper and go to her house and look at her garden and look at where it's expanded. And even if I'm just lurking on her Facebook and I look at where she started these years ago and now it's all of this, right? I know this person in real life and I know they could do it. So I think I can do that too. And if it gets hard, I can ask them for help. Like I know real people I can reach for help. So my hope is that it'll help some people want to continue and build this tradition and get some young people plugged in. I'm huge on intergenerational connection. And so hopefully get some young people plugged in with some of the elders who are growing, who are maybe saying, they're getting to a place where the physical labor of this work isn't going to be there as much longer, but they have so much they want to share, right? Mama Ira Wallace, who I consider a super hero of mine. I've never met her, but she talks a lot about saving seeds and how she doesn't want to just save the seeds, but the stories that go along with them are with a lot of these elders that we don't have because we're so disconnected. And so I feel like the soil is one of those places where we can connect easily, where we can connect without a whole lot of pretense, and people can really share a lot of those things in just a really intimate environment and build those connections and kind of preserve a lot of that wisdom, a lot of that history that we just wouldn't get anywhere else.
I want to shout out some of the Black Power Media fam that's in the chat. Shouts out to Jamon and
talking Black media.
Yeah, and
Listen,
Breeze.
they make me buy too many books. All of them. If Dr. Jared Ball come here, tell him I'm not buying not one more book off him. I don't want to hear nothing else. I'm not getting no more books from him. What's the other one? Not Revolt TV. What is it? It's Dr. Kalanji.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
On Black Power Media.
yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Riot Starter TV. That's what it is.
Oh yeah,
Riot
Riot
Starter.
Starter. Mm-hmm.
My nerves and my book collection, my Amazon accounts, messing around with him. Every guest he have on there, I'm gonna get that book.
Okay, so speaking of books,
yes.
So you have a book project, right? Don't you have an upcoming book project?
I do have a book project.
Yeah. So okay, let's go there. So with your upcoming book projects and all your other ventures,
yeah.
You do what, an ultra marathon, you're doing comedy.
Yeah.
So talk about the book project, but then also how do you manage to balance like all these diverse pursuits, like with everything that's going on, right? Plus your ongoing commitment to the Black Farm Finder app, you know, and your community outreach.
I was gonna say I only balance them in my imagination at this point. I'm pretty sure they just take turns, right? What I know is they take turns. And so like with the Black Farm Finder app, this is one of those things that becomes, gardening is not so much seasonal as it is. There's definitely seasons you're going to be working a lot more than others. And if you plan it right, you can kind of start to, I know you've probably seen this, you can kind of start to not have to, you're not starting from zero every year, right? You got some things that have dropped some seeds where you're like, oh, yep, those collards came back on their own. I didn't have to go out and get new transplants. Some of the other pursuits, so like the marathon stuff, I realize I can only do those maybe like one every 5 or 6 years. So that works for me though, because even with doing that, I consider marathoning like a form of self-care, right? For me, the last marathon I did was in 2018. I did the Detroit Free Press Full Marathon, all 26.2 miles of it. And I had a blast. I came in completely last. I was exactly the last person to come across the finish line. Like they were about to break down the finish line by the time I got there. And that's not an exaggeration. They even posted it on their Facebook page and everything. But it was one of those things for me is I wanted to finish. And it had been the culmination of like months and months and months of me training, me focusing, me putting my attention on reaching this goal. And the reason I call it self-care is because you cannot train and walk and work for like hours and hours and hours, multiple days a week without paying attention to yourself. Like you get to know yourself extremely well, right? You get to pay attention to your breathing patterns. You know, without anybody even telling you when your glucose is low, right? And you need to do something else. Or when you're about to have a Charlie horse, you become really sensitive to taking care of yourself better, right? And I was really serious about recovery. Like I was like, after this marathon, I scheduled an IV so I wouldn't be dehydrated. Like it was serious business. And it was probably one of the most grueling experiences of my life because I never did like a half marathon before that. Like I'm real big on just like jumping right into stuff. And so I was like, my goal was to do ultra marathons. And so I was like, well, I guess I got to do a regular marathon first. So I had done maybe like a 10K. And then I was like, I'm doing a whole marathon. And so I did that. And that was probably one of the greatest experiences because I was out there largely by myself. Like most people think of a marathon, people are just running full speed. Like that's retarded. Nobody's doing that. Most people are doing this jog where they're bouncing more than usual for most of the time, and then they're walking. And once you get past, like most of the people who sign up for a marathon are doing the half marathon. Like so in the free press, it was like 25,000 people. Once you got to the halfway mark, more than like 3/4 of those people were gone. And it's just a few of these people sitting out there still. And so largely a lot of that was solo. And the volunteers on the race trail were out there. And I'd always tell people around mile 15, my mind left my body. It was like, hey, if you're going to keep doing this, we're not going with you. Okay. And so I had to do it without the rest of my mind as well. But by mile 15, your body is kind of like, I'm doing this thing. By the time I got to Belle Isle, which I think was like mile 20, I was like, there's no way I'm stopping. I went 20 miles. Like, this is stupid. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. And so I'm literally at mile 22, and they're like, you think you'll do another one? I'm like, I'm crying, literally, physically. This is not an exaggeration. Tears. I'm like boo-hoo crying while coming back across the Belle Isle Bridge. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. Like, absolutely, I'm doing this again. Because I think too, it makes you come to the end of yourself. So once you come to the end of, you pushed yourself kind of to the point where you're, everything in you is like, cut this out. Like, we need to stop. All the alarms are going off. And you're like, no, I think I can go a little bit more. I think I can just push a little bit more. That I feel like it just takes you to a different space mentally. And after that, you couldn't tell me nothing. Like, I mean, you could tell me I couldn't do nothing. I was limping everywhere, but I knew you couldn't tell me nothing. So part of going back to that was just reaching the ultra marathon goal, right? So for anybody who doesn't know, ultra marathon is anything longer than 26.2 miles. So my first ultra marathon is a 50K coming up in September. So now I really got to do it because I done said it on the Piper Carter podcast. Came back out the thing now. So it is a 50K, which is 31 miles. So 31 miles on my feet. And this one is going to be a trail race. The last one I did was free press is like on the street, right? So you're in the city of Detroit, walking around downtown, you go across the bridge and stuff. But this next one I'm doing is a trail marathon in, it's like a campsite, probably about an hour away. Fun fact is that it's actually in a place called Gregory, Michigan, at a camp where my first job was. So I felt like I had to pick that one because it's kind of a full circle moment. I worked at a Boy Scouts camp back in the 90s. And this race is actually going to be at the camp that I used to work at. So I get to go back there and take my kids there and go walk for 31 miles because why wouldn't you, right? So outside of that book project, so there's actually a couple books. One major one that I'm working on, I read a lot. So reading a lot and being involved in community gives me a couple of passions, right? One of those passions is labor. So a lot of my studies around labor movements, labor organizing, civil rights organizing in general usually had a lot to do with labor. Most, human rights in this country had a lot to do with labor. And in my vast experience in the work world in the last 27 plus years, I realized that there was a lot of things that you would see, people had been talking about this work shortage since the pandemic, and there's no workers and nobody wants to work, and, nobody wants to do this. And everywhere I worked, I would always say, I've had some great people that I worked for. I don't believe in the term boss. Most people know I don't have bosses. I don't care what you need to call yourself, but you're not my boss. So like, I don't know what that means for you, whatever you need to tell yourself on a day-to-day basis. But I remember distinctly in some situations where people would just kind of be on this. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to, put in a full day's work. Nobody has work ethic and all of this stuff. And I was like, yeah, people don't have a problem working. People don't want to work for you. And so I started doing, more research just on the process of things like what having a poor work environment does to you, and kind of what that does to your psyche, what that does to you emotionally. And even with books I was reading that had nothing to do with like labor organizing and stuff, I would just keep bumping into what labor looks like, right? So I am I don't even know what to label myself. We had this conversation a couple weeks ago about politics. I don't know what I would label myself, but I am a person who believes that love should govern everything you do, right? And so even in the workplace, like, I don't believe there's a difference between like business and personal. I believe that sometimes you have to follow certain rules in certain spaces. Like if you're doing surgery on people, you got to follow the rules. You can't, kiss them in the mouth or whatever. Like germs can be passed. There's rules to this thing. But love is important everywhere, right? And so I would bump into things that talked about people who are allowed to be their full selves, even in their work, right? And how that empowered them. But when people were dehumanized at work or treated like they were just supposed to be like automatons and just shut up, do your work, get out, do what we tell you, man up. It don't matter how I talk to you. You should just, be happy you got a job. How that dehumanization sparks so many other areas in people, like how that lack of fulfillment shows up in other places of people trying to fulfill themselves in all the wrong ways and like trying to self-medicate and stuff. And so I would just keep bumping into different things about people and labor and work. And so I started working on this book called Nobody Wants to Work for You. And so that's the crux of the first book that I'm working on right now. And there are others just on some other topics that are largely written, just not written together. Like during the pandemic, I did a lot of writing and did not put it anywhere. I just was like, this was good. I got this out of myself and took it nowhere, right? And so probably in the last year or so, reading a lot of bell hooks and a lot of Alice Walker, and just realizing that sometimes just having a lot to say but not wanting to say it. And so I decided in 2024 we just gonna get all that out, and that's kind of what comedy does too. Comedy allows me to get a lot of that stuff out. Just sometimes some of those little pressure cooker things that just have to pop off. And I love connecting with people, so comedy lets me kind of directly connect with people, and making people laugh is kind of something that's always naturally been a thing for me. So I just kind of decided to step out into it. I started doing that last March. Was my first time being on stage doing comedy, and man, I've enjoyed it ever since. I'll be headlining a show in March. I'll have to send you the information about that. But yeah, it's been phenomenal. I've just been having a good time. And so how do I prioritize? Everybody takes turns. Everything doesn't usually take the same amount of time, so that's cool. Once we get past launch with the app, and then some of the events that are coming up, and the season is kicked off, and I'm in the dirt the way I need to be, outside of training, just focusing on getting book projects done and, raising these kids.
Let's talk about that part, because there's a lot of parents that are in. Well, there's a lot of parents in the chat. There's a lot of parents that are in our community, and like I know a lot of parents are like, I don't have time. Like I don't have time for this. I want to know, can you share? Because we talk about in the Black liberation space. Because I always talk about, we talk about stuff, then there's what we do. So we talk about in the Black liberation space, like this world that we're going to create, right? Or like all of these terrible things, this extractive nonsense that we need to dismantle, right? We need to dismantle this country. We need to dismantle all these systems of oppression. We need to just dismantle all this crap. Patriarchy, all the things.
Oh, yeah.
And then we say, somebody needs to do something. And then we say, all the things that we think that need to be done. And like you kind of named before, when we look around, it's like the little red hen.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite story, man. Favorite story.
Now that's just in general, right?
Yeah.
So now add on here, you're a parent. You're a single parent.
Yep.
Help me understand, and help parents understand, because I would say from the outside looking in, you got it all together, and you're a rock star, and you do all this stuff, and you make it look easy, flawless, and amazing, and your kids are right there.
Yeah.
Now, I will also say this. Your daughter was in our youth program, so I have worked closely with her. I won't say her name because she's a minor, but but I've worked closely with her, and she's now a teen.
Yeah.
Ager. I've gotten a chance to build with your son because he's right there with you. Both your children are right there with you all the time, doing all the stuff. I will say we do have a romantic idea. I don't mean sexually romantic, but I mean just a romanticized idea about the family's gonna be together.
Yeah.
Doing this whole thing. And I know from working with youth, not just your youth, but just youth.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's real like, oh, this is fun and I love it. And sometimes it's like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
When are we leaving? Can I
But
leave here now? But there's still a whole bunch of stuff that has to get done.
Yep.
Because maybe they're in school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're in activities at school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just don't want to do it sometime. Maybe they just want to be
Yep.
on whatever, just having fun doing the dances. Help us understand how, as a parent, you've been able to balance with your children their, I want to say, like, their interest,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes the lack thereof, or sometimes the enthusiasm.
Yep.
I don't want to make it seem like it's either way. It's
Yeah.
all of that. But how do you manage and balance that and incorporate it into what you're doing, but then also like respect their boundaries and their time and the stuff that they got going on? Like, how do you
Oh yeah.
do that?
If you ask me, not as well as I could most days. So I think it's just been, so my kids probably have an advantage / disadvantage. My daughter was homeschooled till she was 10. So and I was a single mom that whole time. I used to just always work jobs that would let me bring my kids with me, which was phenomenal. And it like multiple, whatever the industry, like I've never had a job since I had my kids where I couldn't take my kids with me. So my kids have kind of always been like in the co-pilot seat a little bit and just kind of having to go with the flow with whatever mom is doing. When they were littler, it was kind of like, okay, it's whatever. But I have pretty opinionated kids. Like most people know that my kids they will definitely tell me like, hey, we're doing too much of this. Like we don't want to see this no more. Do we have to, you know? And sometimes the answer is no, you don't have to. Like I love being out in the garden all the time. I love being out in the sun. Now, for me, partially, it is medicinal for them. They understand the benefits. They understand why it's important for them to get vitamin D, and how I think that, you know, so much of a lot of the mental issues we have right now with that vitamin D deficiency that we can work on naturally, right? And so they don't fight. They're pretty smart kids. They're thinkers. You know, they gonna give me the pushback. They definitely are gonna do that. But in a lot of ways, they'll be like, okay, you know, and we've compromised. There have been times where it's like, hey, can we help for 2 hours and then, you know, just relax for a little bit? And I might feel like going for 3 or 4 or 5. And it might be, hey, can we go home, or can we go over somebody else's house? And a lot of times I would definitely, most parents would say the same thing. I would rather you be somewhere else calm and cool than in my ear driving me crazy when I'm trying to be peaceful. So sometimes it's a peaceful, hey, y'all can go somewhere else. As far as other community stuff, you know, I think that's part of the work. I feel like part of doing this work, I never want my kids to be separate from what I do, right? I don't ever want them to be like, mom gave all her time to this and never had time for us, right? Or we never were with her. She always left us to go do that, right? So even no matter what I'm working on, it's always mom time, right? So if it is an issue, if it's oh man, I gotta stop and go to the school, that's what it is. Like I that was with jobs, that's with community, and luckily a lot of that stuff just really doesn't happen. Because a lot of times my kids are in community, like, and so wherever they are, people know who their mother is, and that was major for me. That's one of the reasons they are with me all the time, is because I want people to know, like, who you with, okay? Who you with. So when they go place and it's like, wait, I think I know your mama. That I planned that, like I wanted it that way. And I like to have them around me as well as around other people in the community that I trust and think will be positive impacts on them. Like I lived outside of the city for a couple years, and my son was still young, and I knew I wanted to move back to the city because I wanted my son to be around Black men. I wanted my son to see Black men doing things. So it is extremely intentional for me that, you know, my son sees the Yusuf Bunchy Shakurs and the Greg McKenzie's and the Malik Yakinis and the Kari Frazier's and the, you know, he is able to be around them all the time, right? He can just talk to them. He can just, you know, and they're not far away. These aren't far off ideals for him. And when they're talking to him about historical people and they're talking to him about events, he understands the reality of that, right? This is not like, oh, these are people we heard about. These are people he knows, right? Oh, thank you, Quasi, and a Quasi Aquamu. Like I always forget. I'm like, don't say names because you're gonna forget somebody, right? But my kids definitely have the ability to be exposed to so much. And shout out to you for unschooling and homeschooling, because homeschooling was phenomenal for me. Like I'm not gonna say I'm a rule breaker, but it's a lot of stuff that I just feel like in schools is unnecessary and doesn't make a lot of sense. And so when I was homeschooling my daughter, I always tell people at a young age, I knew my daughter was gonna be one of them people that was gonna get under certain types of people's skin, right? Because when she was young, I didn't teach her that there was stuff she couldn't do, right? So she learned how to read it too. And I never taught her that certain words were too big or certain books were too thick. And so when she was reading chapter books at 4 and 5, I knew that when I tried to put her in a school, it was going to be problematic, right? Because when she started school, it was, oh no, she can't be in that grade. We got to put her back a grade because she was homeschooled. And I'm like, hey, run a test or something. Don't just make that assumption. Give her a test. Do at least give me an objective reason why you're doing this nonsense. And so, after testing, both of my kids were far ahead of the rest of their peers. And in the school system, they started to experience things like teachers wanting to, I won't say dumb them down, but definitely like one time I actually literally, this is a true story, I got called to my daughter's school by her teacher because her teacher was like, yeah, we think she read her standardized test too fast. We don't think it's possible for her to read that fast. And so we told her she needed to stop and slow down and do it again. And then she still did it too fast. And so I'm sitting there with the principal, with this teacher, and I'm looking at these people like, are you serious right now? Like this can't be life, right? Because when I was younger, I felt like teachers wanted to see you excel. And I feel like there's something a little bit different going on right now. And so I'm sitting in the office with these people telling me she couldn't have possibly read it that fast. She couldn't have possibly done. Do you even believe that, Mom? And I'm like, I absolutely do. Like I raised her. I taught her, like, you know what I'm saying? Like she read the books I read. Like we not playing in our house. Like I don't know what you're talking about. And so then they had to call me back and apologize. Like she got the highest score in the class. We apologize. We just thought like, don't put your, it's this quote by Eric Thomas where he says, don't put your limitations on me. And I tell people that all the time, like, don't put your limitations on me or mine. So sometimes with my kids, it's a lot of, it's a lot of dialogue. I believe in dialoguing with kids, especially because I wanted to raise thinking children. Like even when I was pregnant with my kids, I used to always be like, I'm not raising no effing followers, right? And so I've always said I wanted them to think. And that starts at home, right? Like a lot of people be like, oh, well, your kids disagreeing with you. That's disrespectful. No, it's not. They have to practice that somewhere, right? They have to practice learning how to think critically, learning how to push back on stuff that's just handed to them versus just accepting it, right? Even if it's from me. Now that don't always mean I'm going to say, okay, the rule is not the rule, because sometimes it is. And sometimes I just have to say, you're not going to get it yet. Like you're not going to understand it yet, but that's what it is. But for the most part, balance is one of those things where it's like, I try to make sure I'm there for them enough where they feel like I'm there for them enough. Not so much what I feel like, sometimes I am the parent who I know when I'm not at my best, right? If I'm not getting enough rest or if I'm too stressed, I'm not giving the best of myself to them, right? And so there's, I left a job last year because it was so stressful that I was probably for the better part of a year just in one of the worst places, physically, mentally, health-wise in my life. And it was detrimentally impacting like my interaction with my kids, my physical health. Like I was grinding my teeth so bad they were breaking, and I had to shut it down, right? And so a lot of times people are like, well, what do? You gotta make ends meet. You gotta do stuff. And I'm like, you do something else. That for me has always been the biggest thing, is prioritizing taking care of myself, because I know I gotta take care of them, right? But also even with them, because they're older now, they're about to be 11 and 16. And so teaching them at this age that, it's not just what somebody else can do for you. It's not just what mom is supposed to do for you all the time. Like last summer I had COVID and it was just me and my kids. So neither of my kids got sick. I was quarantined in my room with COVID, and my kids were kind of largely taking care of life and making sure I was okay on the other side of the door and, all kinds of stuff. And being able to teach them how to be decent human beings, right? With character. That's probably always been my biggest goal. And so, seeing that play out just in their conversation, in the way they interact with the world, whether that's in school, whether that's in community, that always is what keeps my balance. Like, I've never gotten reports like, oh my God, they're losing it. They're falling apart. They're acting up. Now they'll push the button at home. Like my son, his school was like, we don't even think he talks. Does he even use words? And I'm like, listen, don't play with me about this boy. I used to argue with him, like, why you don't act crazy on them and come home and be normal with me? Like, let's switch this around. But yeah, they've just been phenomenal the whole time. Like, being a mom is hard. I always tell people this single mom life ain't for nobody. Like, I don't think it was intended to be this way, but I firmly, firmly, firmly enjoy being a mom. I knew I was supposed to be a mother before I even had my kids. So there was no doubt in that, right? I knew that I wanted to intentionally put a lot of things into them. And I try every day to do that. Like, I'm not going to always not cuss or not talk crazy or not be snappy. They know that, and they give me grace with that. But for the most part, like I tell them every day, I try to do my best, which is what I expect from them. Like, we're going to do the best we can do. And sometimes I just have to tell them today is hard. Like, you know what? I know you want to go to that thing, but today is hard for mom. Like, you might be able to go for 30 minutes and I'm going to sit in the car because I ain't got it. Like, I don't have the capacity, and I want them to be able to do that, right? And so part of my way of teaching them how to be and move and regulate themselves in this world is allowing them to see me do that, right? And so if it's an issue of we got too many events scheduled on a day or it's too much stuff butting up against each other, I always try to let them know that the priority is family. I have a phrase that I say, connection over everything, right? And so I don't want anything to hamper our connection, like, our family connection, versus I just did a lot of stuff. And yeah, a lot of people on the outside of my family think I'm great, but my kids are like, y'all don't even really know her. Like, I try to live my life in a way that my kids see the same person everybody else sees, right? Like, I don't even care how nobody outside my house see me. If my kids see somebody who is horrible and angry and mean or bitter or, whatever it is, or poor character, what somebody else on the outside see don't matter, right? And so, and that part of that comes from my other varied background. I used to be really, really active in ministry. I worked for a church for about 6 years, and I was a Sunday school teacher for a while. And so I saw a lot of kids suffering kind of from the, my mom is always in the church or my dad is always in the pulpit, but I don't see him, right? He's not active in my life. And so I never wanted whatever I was doing in the world to make my kids feel like they were less important, even though, I let them know, like, mom, you're not entitled to all of mom's life, right? But you are an extremely important part. And so just trying to keep that at the fore and making sure that who I am is who I am to them. And they know that they can count on me for whatever it is. They know there's not going to be a time where it's, oh, mom thought that was more important than taking care of me. Like, a lot of people are like, Sherrie, why you don't go harder in comedy? Why you don't go harder with this? I got kids, man. Like, I always tell people I'm a single parent, but I don't consider myself single because I have two people that depend on me every single day. I can't move like a single person. I can't just jump up and go out of town tomorrow. Like, I can't just go on a road trip next week. Like, I got two kids whose lives I am responsible for making sure everything goes well for. So just trying to keep my head screwed on straight and doing the basic things that I do all the time, and just letting them know that they're loved. They know who their mother is. They know who their people are. Just building a village and community around them, I think, is extremely helpful, because at the age, that they're getting now, I think they're getting to the age where they know who mom is, but there's some stuff sometimes you don't talk to your mom about, right? You might go to another trusted adult or older young adult and talk to them about some stuff you might not feel comfortable talking to your mom about. Wanting to make sure that they have that in addition to me, right? And so just working on all those things, they take turns. They're probably not all at the same time. They take turns.
Yeah, I mean, and that's good because, like, I think majority of our community has children.
I think so. I would say so.
Like more people have children than don't. And I love what you were saying earlier about agency and having young people practice agency. I know when I, do youth programming like in community, I prefer to do youth programming in community because you can, have the freedom to like
Yeah,
have them practice that. Not so much when I go into the
yeah,
school because that can get them in trouble. But that's dope. Also, too, I want to uplift Kwasi from the shed.
yeah.
If y'all come to Detroit, Tasha, I think is going. So Tasha's from the Lou from
Mm-hmm.
St. Louis, but I think she's going to sleep. But I want to say peace to Tasha Phoenix and
Peace,
also
Tasha.
to Ki Panga said it's like a dope conversation. Also to who else didn't we say? I think we got everybody so far in the chat. I just want to say peace to people before they start leaving off. So I think I asked like most of the questions, and some of these questions are kind of similar to the other questions.
Okay.
But because we've been on here about an hour and 30.
Yeah.
So before we go, I wanted to just kind of on the end of the video,
Okay.
maybe share again or reiterate in a different way or whatever. The uh talk about the app again.
Okay.
Maybe you don't have to go as in depth because they could rewind this, but maybe give some highlights, you know, about like, how the app is going to be used, when it's going to be launched, and yeah, like how folks can be involved in using it.
Sweet. Okay.
And the name of it, I'll throw it in the chat.
Right. Right. Okay. So I am. My name is Sherrie. For those of you, you probably can see it, but I'm the founder of the Black Farm Finder app, which I created in order for Black farmers to be able to connect with volunteers online so that the volunteers can kind of help Black farmers further sustain their work and kind of keep their work going long term. Secondarily, it also helps farmers connect to one another so that we can kind of build some of those community connections by sharing events and sharing resources, items needed, bartering, trading, you name it, as well as posting events online. Hopefully, there will be some cooperative events toward the ends of the season so that we can celebrate all these volunteers that we know are going to be forthcoming and are going to be excited to work with all these Black farms in the city of Detroit. Detroit native, born and raised, of course. And so this app launches next week. People can kind of bookmark the site now if they want. If they go to www.blackfarmfinderapp.com, it's all one word, www.blackfarmfinderapp.com. If you go there now, it says on the main page that it launches February 8th. So you can prepare for that. And then hopefully if you are a volunteer or you thought about volunteering to help at a Black farm, or you just excited about Black farmers and you want to lend your hand any way that you can on February 8th, I hope that you will go to www.blackfarmfinderapp.com and sign up. If you have a farm and you're Black, I hope you will sign up your farm so that people can come find you and help you. We are looking at options where people can sign up their farms even if they're not taking volunteers, if they just want to be able to connect on the app to see what other Black farmers are doing and maybe meet some other farmers. Not so much if they don't want volunteers, making that available too. They can also follow on Instagram at Black Farm Finder app on Instagram, all one word. That's the apps page. My personal page is Sherrie Soul Ultra, which is where you'll find more me stuff. And yeah, other than that, they can find us around town. Going to be doing some gardening classes at the Mama Akua House starting February 17th in the mornings from, I believe, 10 to 11:30 a.m. There's a 5-week kind of beginning gardening class. People want to come out to that. In March, we're going to be doing the next Black Farm Finder Soup event, which is a kind of grassroots fundraising meal where we get together, raise some funds, and 4 farmers are going to pitch for that. And whoever wins and gets the most votes will take home some cash that day to help start their farm season off right. So, yeah, a lot of dope stuff coming up.
That's so dope. You're so dope. You're
Thank you.
so awesome.
Thank you. We finally got on here because it's been months we've been talking about this.
I'm just glad you're launching the app. Also, too,
Yeah.
I want to say peace to Anaqua from Climate Justice Alliance who's in the chat.
Oh, sweet.
And
Peace.
yeah, so Anaqua is the regional convener
Okay.
for that, but organizes all the regional conveners. Yeah, we're at the end of the broadcast, and I'm asking people to like, share, subscribe.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Let people know about this Black Farm Finder app, because like Sherrie said, it's, I guess you'd call it in beta in this
Yeah,
moment.
you could.
And so it's launching, right? So it's built, it's going to launch, people are going to use it, you'll be able to test it. But maybe it's for Detroit, but maybe you put your zip code in there,
Yeah.
and we'll see, right? Like you
Yes.
might have made just a general tool, like
Yes. I mean,
for
so it's not
everybody.
limited in distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the people from further away want to jump on, knock yourselves out. Listen, I got some traveling to do this year. So if I got to touch down in another city where we got a good number of farms, I might have to make some visits. I have to make some stops.
Yeah. So let's try the app, and let's everybody get on the app on the 8th, and map as many farms and
Yeah.
gardens and things as we can, as well as like what you offer. If you offer tools, if you want volunteers, if you are selling food, or if you need a place to sell food, right? Um and yeah, let's continue to connect. Oh, I want to shout out Q. Cooking with Q is in the chat. So that's
Wait, cooking with Q was that delicious macaroni and cheese that was at your podcast event
yes.
that we was eating
So
out of cups.
let me tell y'all something. Uh
Listen,
Cooking with Q is the best vegan
yeah,
food in Detroit.
absolutely.
Listen, I love y'all food makers. I
Mm.
love y'all. And Cooking with Q, the
Yes,
best, hands down, the best vegan food in Detroit.
yeah, that mac and
The
cheese is
best.
fire,
The best
fire.
vegan food in Detroit. And so yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sidebar.
I love all of y'all. I love all of y'all.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to tell y'all the truth.
That you got.
That's why when I have my podcast event, when I
Mm-hmm.
have my events, Cooking with Q does the food at like
Yeah,
my events. If I have an event, y'all eating Cooking with Q. Okay, just letting y'all know. It's great food. It's amazing, delicious. She takes recipes and then you'll be
yeah.
like, "How I didn't even know vegetables could do
Listen,
this."
listen. I definitely did not. I was like mac and cheese. We was eating that mac and cheese out of cups with the serving spoon. Wasn't on spoons. It was wild. It was wild,
Yeah,
but there was none left behind.
she makes all her sauces. Everything's fresh. She's very creative. She's just a beautiful personality. And sorry, that's a side. That's just a little sidebar. This chat for you. People showed up for you,
Okay.
Sherrie, because this was a
I
rock
appreciate
star
it. I
chat
can't see it, so I
this
got to go back
evening.
on YouTube so I can see the chat, so
Well,
I
this
can
is gonna be the
respond
live. This is gonna be the live chat that you'll have to go back.
and watch it over. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, she Cooking with Q said two things I do real good: cook and pray. Okay,
All right, we'll take
that's what's
both.
up. Right. And if y'all Cooking with Q, just look it up. But
Mm-hmm.
it's in my hood where I grew up, over there, New Center / North End, which is where the co-op's gonna be.
Yeah.
And Detroit People's Food Co-op's gonna be up the block there. But Cooking with Q is right there on West Grand Boulevard off of, I'm sorry, she's on Woodward off West Grand Boulevard. So check her out. I think is it Wednesday through Saturday that she's open.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to stop over there.
Yeah. You got to. When you do the when we go to protest and they say I got to have it. That's how I feel about cute food. That's how I feel about cute food. So okay, well, this has been Piper Carter Podcast. I'm here with Sherrie Smith of the Black Farmer app. Everybody put a whole bunch of hearts and hands in the chat,
Thank
because
you.
Sherrie made an app for
Right.
all of the people, for all the people growing food. We're
Yeah.
gonna map
Yeah.
all these Black people growing food. so we can know where everybody is. Oh, she said pull up Friday through Sunday. Okay.
Okay.
All right. She got a DJ Friday nights playing good music.
Okay.
It's amazing. Amazing, amazing. And so this Black Farmer app, there's gonna be the soup event too.
Yep, March 24th. So the day after D-Town opens, that Sunday, March 24th. We're going at the Mama Cool House. We're gonna be fundraising for one lucky farmer. Well, not lucky, but one farmer who convinces everybody else that they need to support.
Okay, so we'll keep pumping that.
Yep, and the application will be on the app, so they'll be able to apply on the app to pitch at the soup. And once we pick the pictures, and we're gonna have us a time.
All right, y'all farmers, y'all better be at that soup event, or tell somebody that's growing to be at the soup event. Absolutely. So that they can pitch and get a little dough.
Yeah, they gotta apply. They gotta apply, and then win that pitch.
Okay. All right. Aisha's in the chat. Wow, you had a superstar chat, Sherrie. Hey! People came out for you, honey.
Listen, I'm excited. I got to reply to all these comments for all the love. I appreciate everybody for coming out.
Yeah. All right. So we're excited. Once again, it's Piper Carter Podcast here on Detroit is Different Podcast Network. Here every Tuesday at 8 p.m. So y'all come back. You hear?
And subscribe, hit the little bell, all of that.
Yeah, subscribe, click the bell, do the whole thing. And we'll see y'all next week. Peace.
All right, bye. Peace.